Welcome to the Business Growth Accelerator Show. Thank you so much for joining. Our primary goal here is to help you as an entrepreneur to grow your business fast with as little resources possible. We talk about everything from smart digital marketing skills and business strategy to motivation and soft skills. Top interviews with industry leaders to inspire and give you the skills to grow your business. I'm your host, Pierre Muller. Now let's jump in. Hello, everyone. Our special guest today is Dr. Mark T. Wade. He's the creator of Virtual Swag Bag, CEO of Viral Summits Concierge, founder of Virtual Summits Software, and host of the top-rated Virtual Summit podcast. He's the visionary behind the evolution of summits. From brick and mortar businesses to online empires, Dr. Mark has created 6, 7, and multi-7-figure companies using virtual summits. He's the creator of the One-Day Summit, Interview with Impact, and the Summit Story Arc, and has consulted with some of the world's top brands, businesses, and entrepreneurs. Dr. Mark, we are delighted to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, great. Mark, now just to kick us off, please tell us your story and just please share with us what was sort of your entrepreneurial path which really led up to virtual summits and everything that you do today.
So it actually, interestingly enough, did not start in the summit or entrepreneurial space per se. I'm a doctor by trade. I have 2 doctorates, and I was working in a clinic, in a posture correction clinic. Right out of college, we moved to Italy and started a clinic there. Became pretty successful, one of the more successful posture correction clinics in the country. And from there, we decided we wanted to start helping other people do what we've done. So we decided we were going to start an online institute. Now, keep in mind, this is like a decade ago. So back at that time, this was kind of a crazy idea.
Yeah.
And it was a little challenging. It was kind of the first time it had happened. So we ran into some complications, some challenges getting started until we came across this idea of a virtual summit. I heard my now good buddy, Pat Flynn on Smart Passive Income talk about this concept. And I said, this just makes sense. I'm going to give it a go. The problem was at the time I was just getting started. So I didn't have a whole lot of authority, a whole lot of influence, and I was only able to get 7 speakers. My ego prevented me from canceling it and telling them I couldn't do it. So we just went ahead and moved forward with it, and we ran it as a one-day summit. And we're really glad we did. That one-day summit went on to do around 5,000 leads and generated around $32,000, which was some of the first money we've made at that point.
Yeah.
Really cool is the backbone of that summit went on to become a certification, which became $1 million certification. And then that company went on to become a multi-million-dollar company called the American Posture Institute, which is still there today. It's the world's leading provider of postgraduate online posture education.
Wow.
So when we found something that worked, we decided to double down and triple down into it. So we started running 2 to 4 multi-day summits, 4 to 8 one-day summits every year in that company. And still to this day, we run them in that company and all of my companies. But I hit a point where I was really frustrated. So that first summit that I just told you about, I had to build it by hand.
Yeah.
There was about 7 different softwares, 26 different plugins, all Frankenstein together. It took me about 100 hours, and it still looked like a 3rd grader built it, right? So add that on top of I now have a team of 4 people working full-time, me run these summits. I was just frustrated. I'm like, you can do a course or a webinar relatively simply and quickly without any dev skills or tech skills. Why is the summit so challenging?
Yeah.
And so that's when I actually got the idea and went on to create the first platform ever for specifically hosting virtual summits called Virtual Summit Software.
Wow.
This is back in 2016, 2017. And then from there, I got to help a couple people get their messages out to the world using virtual summits. And once I got a taste for that, I was hooked.
Yeah.
So in 2017, I went full-time into, later that year, I went full-time into the Virtual Summit software, and I've been helping people ever since. At this point, as you mentioned, we have our software, which is one of the leading providers of Virtual Summit, quickest and easiest way to create a virtual summit. We have our agency called Viral Summits. We even have an in-person conference, which is kind of ironic, but I love the in-person aspect as well, called Summit Fest Live, which is one of the main conferences for virtual events, and a bunch of other stuff. But So that's that journey of how a postural neurologist went from clinic all the way to
Wow.
now spending most of my time helping people with virtual
Wow.
summits.
Sure. Now, thanks for sharing, man. I think that's a fantastic story. And I think I love how you just, I mean, call it ego, call it, determination, but I love how you just jumped in, and you didn't wait for sort of the perfect type of solution, but you just jumped in and you started to add value. And it's amazing how that sort of snowballed over time. And I think it's a great message for entrepreneurs. I think sometimes we wait for things to be perfect. But I think a great message just to get in there and make it happen and start adding value to the world and things will come.
I agree. Yeah, if I often say if I knew how difficult or challenging any of the stuff I have done was going to be before I did it, I probably wouldn't have done it. I mean,
Wow.
everything from moving to a foreign country without speaking the language to start a business to creating a SaaS platform from scratch with
Mhm.
zero dev skill, to creating an agency and beyond. But I think it's a good skill set. I think it's a trait that most entrepreneurs need to have to some degree. Is you can't get caught up too much in all of the details to come. You just
Yeah.
need to know what's that next step and keep going.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a fantastic lesson. Thanks for that. Mark, let's talk about virtual summits. Let's start off with the basics. I think for maybe there's someone in the audience who doesn't know exactly what a virtual summit is. So let's start there. What is the definition of a virtual summit?
So a virtual summit, which there's a few different types of virtual summits. It classifies under a virtual event. It's historically a pre-recorded set of interviews or presentations that solves a problem or a series of problems for a specific audience by bringing in topic experts or niche experts to speak on those problems.
Yeah,
It's typically free to attend, and it's over a certain period of time, and then once it closes, the sessions are locked down and people can purchase an all access pass.
yeah,
So, I mean, that's what a virtual summit is. Now, the
great.
benefit of a virtual summit, the reason
Yeah,
why people do virtual summits is it's the most powerful way to build an audience. So if you're in business, doesn't matter what type of business, it doesn't matter if it's a brick and mortar business or an online business or what industry you're in, you have to have an audience to generate revenue.
yeah,
And it's also one of the more difficult parts of business is generating that audience. Like
yeah.
building an audience is hard. Building a qualified audience is even harder. And building a
Mm,
qualified and engaged audience can sometimes seem impossible. But
yeah,
that's exactly what a virtual summit does because it is what we call a collaborative marketing strategy. You're
yeah.
collaborating with other people to put on this virtual summit that brings an audience in that then generates know, like, and trust. They build a relationship with you, and then they're ready to move on, forward with you with their customer journey.
Yeah. That's fantastic, because I can imagine there's a couple of business owners who might say, look, I'm maybe just starting up, or I've been in business for a while, and I've got my customers, but I don't have a massive audience to tap into, and it's really difficult. What do I do? I've got my website or my funnel. I might run some paid ads, but you talk about a very important point, and that's the trust factor, right? It's one thing to sort of target a cold audience online, but to really, tap into that trust factor and that rapport is something fantastic.
Well, one of the most common mistakes newer entrepreneurs make when they get started is they have an idea and they want to build out that idea, whether it's a course or a coaching program or a certification or a mastermind, whatever. And they spend like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year building this thing out. And it may be immaculate, but then they turn around and they have nobody to sell it to.
Yeah,
And sometimes, scary enough, you could spend all that time building it out. And then once you build your audience, they may actually tell you, well, we don't want it like that. We want it like this.
yeah,
So, unfortunately, building the audience is the hard part, which is why most people don't focus on it because it's the hard part, but it's the
yeah,
most important part. Now,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to take long. And that's why virtual summits exist. Now, here's the thing: virtual summits aren't a new strategy. This is not something that just started a year ago,
mm,
with the pandemic. Virtual summits have been around since 2005 when Melinda Lashinsky created the first ever telesummit. So
okay,
before that, they used to have those teleseminars. It'd be me and you
yes,
on the phone. She did the first telesummit, which was a
okay,
3-day event via phone. And then from there, it's off to the races.
yeah,
But the cool part of it is when I say it's the most powerful strategy for in online marketing, it's a strategy that works no matter what level you're at. Now we see a lot of times the big names like Tony Robbins just ran his World Summit. Pete Vargas ran his summit. You know, we've got I mean, Tony Robbins did over 8 figures on his summit.
Wow.
Pete Vargas did 12 million on his summit. My buddy Russell Brunson, you know, last year did $1 million in the first 14 days of his virtual summits.
Wow.
And we might see that and think, okay, well, it's just for, you know, these big people with the big names and the big teams, and they've got the budgets. But it's actually one of the most powerful strategies for a brand new entrepreneur. Because usually if you're just getting started, you don't have all of those things I just listed. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to spend $10,000 on Facebook ads to try and get leads.
Yeah.
It's hard to reach out to a random person and be like, hey, will you promote my launch? They're like, well, who are you? Right. So all of those things kind of prevent us. But with a virtual summit, the collaborative marketing, the collaborative part of that is what makes it powerful. So when I reach out to speakers, it doesn't matter if I'm just getting started or I'm Tony Robbins. I mean, it'll help if you're Tony Robbins. I'm not
Sure.
gonna lie. But if you're just getting started and you say, hey, look, I have a summit I'm hosting, and there's a bunch of ways to do it where it resonates well with the speakers. But if it resonates with the speaker and the speaker can talk on their zone of genius to this audience, it benefits the speaker too.
Yeah.
Because the speaker's getting some publicity, they're getting access to or exposure to audiences that they don't normally get access to. And again, every single business needs an audience. So they're getting some, so it's beneficial to them. They get some affiliate commissions potentially out of it. You provide bonuses and all these things, but it's one of the best and easiest and quickest ways to essentially go from no list to a list. And that list can be anything from 500 people all the way up to 10,000. It depends on, you know, how well your summit does and what type of summit you're running. But you can get to there within 90 to 120 days, essentially.
Wow.
Now that you have that audience, you now have the opportunity to build a business.
Yeah, sure. No, it really sounds like a fantastic strategy because, as you say, it's really a win-win. I mean, it should be a place where the speakers can really get exposure, and also fantastic, I guess, for business owners, especially in these times where they might be sort of cash strapped. You know, they might have had a tough time, you know, during lockdown, trying to get back on their feet. You know, cash might be tight. You know, they don't have a lot of money for Facebook ads and things like that. And this might be a fantastic strategy to look at. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, well, one other piece to this, because I mentioned, you know, the Tony Robbins, the Pete Vargases, you know, the Dean Graciosis and Russell Brunsons, and they have all these things. And, you know, we might look at it as, well, we can't, but that's one of the benefits is we can now. The strategy is there. So, for example, I wanted to paint a couple pieces to this because some of you may still be going, well, Mark, I get that a summit can help me get the audience, but if I'm just getting started, like, how does that solve the revenue, the tech, all those aspects? Well, there's a variety of different types of virtual summits. The most popular is the one we see most commonly, which is a multi-day virtual summit. That's anywhere from around 3 days onwards up to about 7 days. They even have some called summit shows, which go from 7 days upwards of 30 days, which is the one Russell did last year. And they could have anywhere from 25 speakers upwards of 80 speakers. I did one last year called Summit Talks, which had 125 speakers.
Wow.
I do not recommend you do that on your first summit. Do not do that on your first summit, okay? But the point of it is, those are like the big, you know, the big grand finales. Those things are like, everybody's going to hear about you. You're going to build a big audience. You're going to get a lot of connections and things like that. But you don't necessarily, you don't need to start with that. And most of the time I recommend people don't start with that.
Okay.
There's the one-day summit, which is what we've actually built a lot of our success around, and is now becoming one of the most popular styles of summits to run because of its like the ease of creation as well as the timing.
Yeah.
And it's just what it sounds. It's one day, but it doesn't mean it's a full day in content. It just means your audience has one day to consume it. Okay. So it also overcomes the issue we see right now with attention span. Sometimes those big summits are really great, but sometimes we have people fall off in the middle of them because it's just too much for them to consume.
Yeah.
Now, I still think they're extremely powerful, but why not also have these one-day summits, which allows people to it allows you to get more specific with your target. So you're solving one specific problem versus you maybe 10 or 15 problems, and you get to solve that problem in a day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we do these, for example, in my institute that I was talking about, we did one called Neural Fundamentals. Now, here's a funny thing to that. we originally branded it something else. So we were, one of our certifications in that company is a neurology certification, and it's a 30-hour certification. It's thousands of dollars, and people want to do it, but sometimes they're like, I just don't have the time or the money right now. So then we released a one-day summit. Originally we called it, I forget what we called it, but it got very low in uptake. Here's another I'll come back to the benefits of being able to repurpose summits. We then reran it, changed the name, called it Neuro Fundamentals, Learn Neuro in a Day.
Okay.
It immediately did, I think it did something like, it was a $97 summit. And it did over $30,000. I think to this point, it's been like 2 or 3 years now. It's done over 6 figures.
Wow.
That same summit, like we've just repurposed it.
Wow.
So back to, I get really excited about this, Peter.
Yeah, it's fantastic. No, go for it. Go for it.
The one-day summit. So I mentioned the multi-day summit may be anything from 25 speakers up to 100 speakers. The one-day summit is 5 speakers, maximum 15, with usually 8 to 10 being the sweet spot.
Okay.
So I know any of you listening here, you could hop on 5 interviews. You could do 5 interviews. I don't care how busy you are. You could do 5 interviews. You now have a one-day summit. So the strategy part has changed, which has now allowed everybody, not just the big names, to be able to do it, and the technology. The whole reason we built the virtual summit software is so that it's the quickest and easiest way. So in the past, you may have had to hire a developer, or you may have had to spend 100 something hours and it still looked like a third grader built it. Yeah. But now with the virtual summit software, you can actually have a summit ready to rock in a couple hours for less than $100. So these two strategies right here together allows anybody, whether you're just getting started with no audience, no budget, to get in there and build that audience so that you can start scaling your business.
Yeah. Sure. No, that sounds fantastic. And I think it's going to provide some ideas and motivation for so many entrepreneurs, in this time. So that's really fantastic. Now let's delve a little bit into the details. So, okay, so let's say we're an entrepreneur, we're a business owner, we're ready to get going. You've convinced us, we're ready to get going. Let's start with something like the topic. I mean, how do you find a topic that really resonates with the market, that will really grab the attention of the audience?
Most common mistake summit hosts make is that they choose a topic based on what they think sounds sexy or what's hot right now, or something that they think that their audience will like. When you pick your topic, you always start with the end in mind. So again, I mentioned at the very beginning that the summit is the relationship building strategy. It's where you build, know, like, and trust. It's not your monetization strategy. Can and will you make money off of it? Yes, probably. But the goal is not to shove a bunch of high urgency sales at this audience. The goal is to let this audience come in and create know, like, and trust with you. The monetization strategy happens after the summit in your post-summit profit strategy. Okay. So the most common mistake, the reason this happens is summit hosts will create this topic because it sounds cool, but it doesn't align directly with the thing they're going to sell afterwards. So you're going to lose conversions. So you always start with the end in mind. So take whatever that thing is that you're going to sell. It's usually a solution. So maybe it's a course, coaching program, membership, mastermind, etc. It's solving problems. Okay? Yeah. So whatever that thing is that you're going to bring that audience to after, you start with that. Choose one problem. If we're going to do a one-day summit, choose one problem that solution, that course solves. That's what we're going to build our one-day summit around. Why? Because the people that this attracts are going to be the perfect people to then go into our course or our membership or a mastermind. Yeah. So it's super important. Otherwise, some of those people may convert, but you're putting a lot of time and energy into having an audience that maybe doesn't align directly with your offer. So that's where you start. Now that we know the problem, okay, the problem's easy. To create a title, so that's your topic, that's your problem, that's what your summit's going to be about. Creating a title, which this is kind of particular, but just so everybody has this information, it is the problem or solution plus who the summit is for, okay? So I like to say when you're choosing your summit name, that should be creative. It should be catchy. It should allow your personality to shine through. It does not need to say summit in it. As a matter of fact, a lot of times I tell people not to put summit in it. Some of ours have been Interview Like a Pro summit. We've had Neuro Fundamentals, for example. You don't have to put summit in it, but what you want it to do is catch people's attention. So the first step is the summit name is going to catch their attention. The next question people are going to have is, okay, that sounds cool, but what is it? And is it for me? Yeah. So the problem, which is what your summit's going to be about, lets them know, ooh, I have that problem. And then who's it for, the avatar, lets them know it's for them, okay?
Yeah.
I'm a huge nerd, hand raised here. You don't get 2 doctorates unless you're a nerd. And one of the things I love nerding out about is psychology, why people do what they do or
Yes.
don't do. And there's actually 13 psychological triggers naturally built into a summit, which is one of the reasons it's so powerful. And one of those is called the framing effect. So this is a marketing like law. Like, you hear this no matter whether you're going to do a summit or not. The framing effect says people value negative more than they value positive. What that means is people value loss more than they value gain. An example of that is, if you would have a larger emotional reaction to me reaching into your pocket and taking out $10 than if I gave you $10.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So the point of that is, most people, like, I come from the healthcare space. In the healthcare industry, we want to stay positive and we like to focus on the good, which is great. But people are usually focused on their problem. So in your marketing and your communications, you want to be talking about that problem. And the closer, more specific you can get to that problem, to that person, the higher polarity it's going to pull me to it. So that's just a little fun fact for you there. So that's why we go problem and who is it for. So now that we've decided what our summit is, we've got a name, we've kind of come up with a title. Your summit subtitle, by the way, should be the solutions of your summit, not the benefits, not the features. I see a lot of times people go 17 speakers, 4 days, 38 topics, 12 bonuses. Those are all features. People want to know a solution. After the summit, you'll have 100% clarity on this. Your transformation will be that. You'll walk away with these tactics to this. So that's a solution. That's what people want, a transformation, if you will. So now that you've decided the topic, or now you've decided the problem, what your summit's going to be about, the topic, you've got names and things like that. The next step is we take that problem and we determine what we call micro solutions. So if the problem was, I'm just going to go with like, oh, my problem is I need to lose weight. Okay. A micro solution would be the person that needs to lose weight needs to know about nutrition, about exercising, about diet, about mindset, sleep patterns, etc. Each one of those micro solutions now becomes your session. Your session then determines what speaker you get. This is another very common mistake. When people host a summit, they go, ooh, I want Pierre or Mark or JLD or Tony. Like, they start thinking of names of people they want.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. But if the topics aren't on point with the problem, it doesn't lead the people towards the solution. So we use a strategy called the summit story arc when we create our summits, which takes our audience from where they're at with their pain or the problem or their challenge and guides them along to the solution, which the solution is that post-summit offer course that you're going to ultimately do. And the way you guide them is by determining those micro solutions, those topics, and aligning them in order of worst problem to least problem or inspirational, and bringing speakers on to talk on these topics. Not because the name is cool. It's great to have 1 or 2 what we call anchors or names. That's cool. But honestly, if people just reach out to speakers without thinking about the topic first, it creates what we call a shotgun effect. The topics are just all over the place.
Yeah.
It might be good, but it really doesn't align, or they're repetitive. You don't want either one of those. So those are the micro solutions. That's your topic. Now that tells you what speaker to go out and get. So that's how you would start with, again, to recap, start with the end in mind. That end in mind is your thing that you're going to sell, whether it's a course or a coaching program. Take one problem that solves, and that's what you're going to build your summit around. So that's a 1-day summit. If you're going to do a multi-day summit, add another problem, 2 problems, 3 problems, etc.
Yeah, sure. Mark, thanks so much. I mean, you're sharing so much value here. I think I hope everyone is taking copious notes. It's great content. Thank you for sharing so much detail. All right, so now we've got our topic, and I also love the planning nature behind it. I'm also quite a sort of a strategic, plan type of individual, and I love the strategic side that's behind it. As you say, you're not just jumping on a screen and talking to a few people. There's lots of thinking that goes on behind it that has the success result at the end. Now, let's take some of our entrepreneurs. Let's say, look, I've got my topics. What's the right way to reach out to speakers? I mean, you talked about that. There's a right way and there's a wrong way, and some entrepreneurs might know a few people, who's knowledgeable on those topics, but they might not. So what's sort of a right way to build that relationships or reach out? What advice can you give on that?
Well, I always start off saying my flag in the sand is we are anti-list grabbers. We do not want to be list grabbers. And unfortunately, there's some summit coaches or strategies out there that teach people this tactic, which is just feels slimy and yucky, right?
Yeah.
And you guys may have already seen this. Like usually it starts off with, you get an email that says, "Hey, I'm Mark, and I've got this amazing summit that you're going to want to be on. And if you want to be on it, you need to have a list size of 5,000 people, and you need to send out 17 emails, and these are the due dates." It's like, whoa, like that's that's nothing about me. That's all about you, right? So I can promise you that is not the tactic you want to use. The way we do it is, again, we'll map it out to begin with. So we start with that summit story arc. We map out actually the topics, and then we'll start to do some research and see what speakers align with these topics. Let me take one step up and I'll say, for those of you who are going, but I really want Tony Robbins, I really want Lewis Howes, or some big name. That's cool, and you can get them on your summit. But the strategy you need to go about with that is don't get attached to the who, get attached to that level. So, for example, everybody needs to promote themselves at some point in time. They got a new book coming out, a new program, etc. Jack Canfield, perfect example. Last year, he had a new book coming out. Outside of that, you cannot get him on an interview. You can't get him on a summit. But during the month his book was coming out, he took any interview request that came to him. So outside of that, you couldn't get him. Tony Robbins, another example. You're not going to get Tony Robbins on your podcast or on your summit, except for when he's doing his KBB launch every year. Now, there are still some stipulations to that, but you'll have a much better chance of getting him on. So don't get attached to the name, get attached to somebody at that level if you want somebody at that level, because somebody will need to promote themselves. Now, how you do it, the best way is to, one, map it out and look for the person who aligns with the topic. So what I mean by that is, if you reach out to people based on their zone of genius, the answer is going to be much more likely to be a yes than it is going to be a no. So an example of that is, if you reach out to me, say, "Hey, Mark, I'd love for you to talk on podcasts. You've had 2 top-rated podcasts. Can you teach on that?" Well, I have had 2 top-rated podcasts, but that's not my zone of genius. So the answer is going to be a no. Somebody reaches out and says, "Mark, I'd love to get you on to talk about the One Day Summit formula." You got a much better chance of that. Yeah. Now, how it works obviously goes without saying. If you have a warm contact, it's always better. Okay. And there's strategies of cold outreach and things you can do. The best way is always to start off making it about them. If you can add some great incentives, so more than just, for example, referral incentives, meaning, if they get 50% commissions on anybody they send to the summit that ends up purchasing the summit offer, those are great. But like, for example, on my summits, my speakers, we put it in tiers, and I'll come back to that strategy because it's a pretty powerful strategy. But what I'm trying to say is, we give them options, we give them incentives. So if they do a certain level of performance, I give them a year access to the software. We have anybody who comes on, agrees to speak on our summit, gets access to my speaker training, which shows a summit speaker training. It's a resource. We normally sell it for $1,000, but it teaches them how to get on more summits, how to get the most out of the summits they speak, the things that I know they would want. Now, these are resources that I have that I can give away. You've got resources that you have that are of value to people that you could give away. So adding some bonuses and resources into it. The thing is, you got to think of it like a sales process. So I'm going to give you the most advanced maximum. You can scale it down to wherever you're at, okay? But the most advanced maximum, what we do is, I always have a speaker invite page. So we create an entire page. And if you go to, I'll shoot you over the link. You can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Summit Talks online/speaker-invite or something like that. I'll give you the link. You can see an example. And essentially what it is it's a sales page for my speakers. Now, I'm not selling them anything. I'm selling them on the idea to speak on my summit, which is great because it's ahead, it's standing out from the crowd of what they normally get. Now, you can take that one version down in my Summit Genesis workshop that we do, which is a 3-day virtual intensive. We show people, we build out their summits, et cetera, but we show them how to create a speaker invite, what we call speaker one-pager. So it's kind of like in podcasts, you got one-pagers you send out for your podcast, same thing. So even that, which is just a PDF with some of the topics of your summit, what's the incentive, who's the audience, is going to stand out to that person you're reaching out to versus the email they're getting from the other people that are saying, hey, you got to send 16 emails and list of 5,000, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the speaker invite page, through it, it has topics of like the details. When is the summit? It's got social proof. So on mine, it has a video of John Lee Dumas saying, hey, you know, Mark's a great dude. Check him out, do what he says, etc. I've got some testimonies from other speakers on past summits. And then I have the incentives that I'm giving away for the people who are speaking on my summit and other stuff. So that right there just stands out. Now, that doesn't answer the question, which you haven't asked yet, which is on everybody's mind, is how do I get my speakers to promote the summit?
Yes,
Because
that's
actually the most challenging aspect, right?
Yeah.
I could tell you were just about to ask it. So, you know, getting speakers, let me put it like this. At the end of the day, getting speakers on your summit is a numbers game, okay? We call it the speaker ratio. So most people, if you're just getting started, your speaker ratio is going to be a 1 in 5 to 1 in 10. Which means if you want one speaker, you're going to need to reach out to 5 or maybe up to 10, depending on if you're just getting started, how many connections you have. And that's okay. As long as you know it, now you know how many speakers you need to reach out to get the number you want. If you want 10 speakers, you need to reach out to 50. Sounds like a lot, but it's really not that hard. You just plan an hour to 2 hours every day, research, outreach, research, outreach, research, outreach. Okay, so it's really a numbers game. The other way, the last thing I'll say, and then I'll go into the promotional aspect, is one of the best ways that you can really, we call it the Stairstep Protocol, is on my last summit talks. I reached out to 80 people. I had 250 people apply to speak. So like, how does those numbers work, right? Now, granted, I've been doing this a little bit longer, so I have a lot of connections. But in our process on that page, we had an application. We ended up shutting it down at 250 because we couldn't take anymore. In that application process, in there it says, do you know anyone else who would be a good speaker or fit for this summit? Half the people put somebody down there. And then it says, if yes, what's their name and email? So half the people out of those 85 people that I put down or reached out to, about 40 of them, it was actually a little bit more, but put down a name and email of somebody else. And then out of those people, half of them put down, and so forth and so on. So it's a Stairstep Protocol. The reason we say a Stairstep Protocol is if you reach out, and even if they say no, you can still ask them if they know someone who would be a good fit. About half of them are going to say, yes, I do know somebody. And a fraction of those, maybe 10 to 20%, are going to be a little bit higher in status, authority, expertise, et cetera, than them. So this is how you can actually kind of walk up or stair step up the authority and influence of the speakers on your summit, even if you're just getting started and don't have any. Now, the promotion, okay, this is the hard part. Right now, I'm going to be fully transparent like I always am. I don't sugarcoat anything. Because there's so many people now rushing into this space as far as speakers are concerned, I'm not even talking summits, we're seeing a decrease in speaker follow through or speaker promotion rates. Okay. Let me address one question that just popped up into everybody's mind. Oh, you bring up a good point, Mark. Isn't there so many summits now that there's really too many summits? The answer is absolutely not. 2 facts with that. One, every month there's over 250,000 webinars. Every month, 250,000 webinars. Now, in 2019, there was less than 3,000 summits. 2020, we had almost 10,000 summits. Okay, we had quite a bit. So that was a dramatic increase. However, that was only 10,000 summits. So less than 14% of the world are entrepreneurs, and less than 1% of them will ever do a summit. The reason you think that there's so many summits is the exact reason of why they work. How many of those 250,000 webinars do you see advertised on a daily basis? Not many. How many summits do you see? A lot. The reason is because it's working. You're actually seeing the marketing of those summits versus, for example, webinars or other things. So if you ever hear anybody say, oh, there's too many summits, I promise you, they're still great. You just need to have a good summit, and it needs to be in a niche topic. So the promotional aspect, though, and again, I apologize, Pierre. You pull my string on this topic. I just go.
No, man, it's great. Go for it.
So promotional aspect. So we're seeing a decrease in speaker promotion rate, which is crappy. None of us like that. One, I think we need to start being more vocal about the speakers who are not doing what they've said they would do, which is shows a lack of accountability and a lack of responsibility and respect, which is why inside the Virtual Summit software, we have a marketplace where you can get speakers, like all the speakers that speak on summits can apply to speak on your summit. And we're now adding a feature where we can start to rate those speakers. So you'll start to be able to see speakers who don't do what they say they do. The way we overcome that is, again, we're not list grabbers. So I'm never going to force a speaker to promote. I'm not going to say, hey, if you're going to speak on this summit, you have to promote, because that would be a list grabber. Now, I want them to promote. In order for my summit to do well, I need them to promote. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put it in their best interest. I'm going to make a way that makes them want to promote it. Now, there's a couple basic factors that you need to keep in mind, like again, keeping it in their zone of genius. If you can have your summit based around some kind of mission or revolution or something to rally around, that's going to increase it. If you add a charitable component to your summit, that helps. Those are small factors that make a difference. But what we do is we do a tier. So I let my speakers choose what level they want to participate in, and I award them or incentivize them based on those levels. And I add scarcity to it and only take certain number of people. Most speakers are competitive. Like, they don't even care what's in the tiers, but when they say, ooh, ultimate level speaker, they immediately want to be in that. And only 3 people can have it. Yeah. I want that tier. Well, in order to have that tier, here's what you're agreeing to. So we have a standard tier, which is no promotion. Okay, so if you can be on the summit and not promote, no problem. Here you go, there's the standard tier. But our featured tier requires 3 emails, and in addition, you get these extra incentives. Our partner level tier requires 5 emails and has these additional incentives.
Oh, I see.
So, and we only allow a certain number of people, less and less, at each of those tiers, which creates a bit of scarcity or competition. So by doing that, we get our speakers to raise their hand and say, I'm going to send 5 emails because I want this tier.
Yeah.
So you need to be creative on what you add into those, but that's the way, that's one of the better ways. That's the first step. The second step is you need transparency. So if doing a Facebook group or a Slack group or WhatsApp group and highlighting those who are doing well, sometimes we call it like a leaderboard contest, which you can incentivize with awards or cash or whatever, or it can literally just be a leaderboard and who's doing the best, and making that transparent to all the speakers.
Okay.
Because it's easier to hide when nobody knows I'm not promoting. But as soon as all of my colleagues and other professionals see that I have 0 leads I've contributed and they've all done 100 or 500, well, now it looks bad on me. Now, you don't want to shame them. I'm not saying shame them, but you just make it transparent.
Yeah.
And again, that kind of taps into that that competitive nature of most entrepreneurs is they don't want to be in last place. So boom, they're going to start to promote. So they're not sitting down here in last place. There's a lot of other ways, but those are 2 of some of the more powerful ones that you could throw into speaker promotions.
Sure. No, that's very, very clever.
Bottom line though, biggest one, most important one, top one, those are all strategies. But the most important one is a relationship. You have to treat that speaker like a relationship, okay? A common mistake I see people make is they will court that speaker because they want that speaker so much to speak on their summit. So they'll send flowers, they'll send nice emails, they'll send them a voice message, a video message, everything they can do to get that speaker to say yes. And then they have the interview, they're following up to get them on the interview daily. And then the interview happens and then crickets. The speaker doesn't hear from you until the week they're supposed to promote. And all of a sudden you're reaching out to them being promote. Well, that kind of feels like an exchange. It feels like I'm being used a little bit.
Yeah.
So we call it the speaker follow-up process. That the ongoing outreach to that speaker after the interview and before the promotion is as important as getting that speaker onto that interview, because that's what's going to make them feel a little bit indebted. They're going to see that you care more about them as a person than just getting them to promote. And that's really what will move the needle the biggest.
Yeah, sure. No, that's all about the relationships, eh? And then sort of paid versus free summits. I mean, what typically works? What's your advice around that?
So virtual summits are historically free to attend. The reason they're free to attend because it's an audience generation strategy. So if you're going to put and you can put we call them premium summits, you can put a price tag on that, but those are typically geared more to an audience that you already have. Because if I don't know you and I'm not really confident in this, I'm not going to pay a couple $100 to attend it necessarily. However, if it's for free and I can hop in there and check it out, and now I get to know, like, and trust you, I'm willing to pay a couple $100 on the end of that for your next offer. So the biggest difference is, what's your strategy? If your goal is, or what's your goal? If your goal is to build an audience, then it needs to be free. Because even with, the one we did, the neuro fundamentals, which made, or actually we just did one last year, in the institute, called Virtual Neurology Summit. We made it a paid summit. It did, I think, upwards of, like, overall around 80 grand. I think it did almost 80 grand. It only had 200 attendees. I mean, 80 grand's great, but if my goal was to build my list, I only got 200 people. So that summit, obviously the goal for that summit was monetization. But if my goal is to build my audience, I don't want to put a paid marker on that. The other thing, which is now, we've never had to teach on this until 2020, which is the difference between a summit and a live stream conference. So these are actually two completely different things and two completely different strategies, okay? But they often get confused as the same, a live stream summit or a virtual summit. They're actually not the same. A live stream summit, or what I call a live stream conference, strategy is typically to an audience you already have, or a warmer audience. It's paid access, they pay for it. It's live, which means they've got to be there from 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11. If they're not, they miss it. And the goal of that is typically to sell a higher ticket item, like a coaching program or a mastermind or something like that. So that's the goal of the live stream conference. The people have to be there, they have to engage. And the goal of that is, by getting them to engage, you can sell this higher ticket item. A virtual summit, as we've already explained, the goal is to build an audience. Now, the way people consume this, the reason the summit is so beneficial is because of the way it allows people to consume the information. Now, it's usually pre-recorded. You should have some live stream, maybe a wrap-up Q&A at the end of the day. Adding some live components is beneficial, but you don't want to make your summit completely live, because the way most people watch a virtual summit is not on your schedule, it's on their schedule. So they're checking it out before the kids wake up in the morning, or on their lunch break, or at night after the kids go to bed, or while they're brushing their teeth or watching one of the videos. So as long as they can participate it when they want, they get in, they consume the content, they engage with you, they create that know, like, and trust, which now primes them to convert on the back end to your post-summit offer. So those are two different strategies, and that's why I'd say it depends on your goal or your objective on which one you use.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. That's fantastic to notice the difference, because it's it sort of feels like it is the same thing. What's sort of the pros and cons. So that's very interesting. Thanks for that. Mark, now let's go to your software, sort of, and wrap up with that. Tell us a bit more about Virtual Summit software, what it does, how it works, and where our audience can go to learn more, and jump into your content.
Well, absolutely. So, I mean, we have tons of free resources. If you go over to virtualsummits.com, you can get access. We got free trainings on interviewing, on setting up, a summit home video on how to create your summit, strategies on the one-day summit formula. That's also where the software is at. So you can get demos on the software. Our podcast is over there. So lots of great resources. The software, just to put it like this, the whole goal behind the software and our through line is, we want it the quickest and easiest way for you to host a summit. Now, we've got some really cool features in there. We've got speaker management tool, which is essentially like having a VA, which follows up with the speakers automatically to get their headshots and their bios and to fill out their profiles and all that. It's all automated. You can essentially have a summit, and you don't need it's got the website, it's got the sales aspect, it's got the deliverability, et cetera, all built into it. But one of the coolest features, which really actually has revolutionized how virtual summits industry, is our Ever Summit feature. So the summits have been around since 2005, and they've always been to build an audience. Problem is, okay, here's the nerdy guy coming out against psychology. Once the summit ends, people see that it's over and they see that it's old, and subconsciously we view as old, it's no longer of value. And so forever, summits would be like a one-off thing. You would put all this time and energy, you would build your audience, and then after it was over, it wouldn't convert new leads. Now, the cool thing with a summit is, even if you're just getting started and you have no course, no products, anything like that, a summit will become a product. So afterwards, you can still sell it as like an upsell, a downsell, flash sale, affiliate sale. But the power of a summit is building the audience. So we created a proprietary technology called the Ever Summit feature. So the Ever Summit feature, with one click of a button, the Summit software will rerun the Summit as if it's live, meaning ongoing or good, ongoing forever, hence Forever Ever Summit.
Yeah.
So anybody that comes to that page sees, oh, the Summit starts next Tuesday. They go in, the software tracks them, opens and closes everything based on that individual. And then they come back out and they go to that page and it says, Summit's over, please upgrade to keep access. But all new traffic sees that page, says Summit starts next Tuesday. So now instead of your Summit sitting back and collecting on a virtual shelf, collecting dust, it can be on your website, it can be in your resource area, it can be in your podcast, show notes, et cetera, because it's forever good. And there's a bunch of other features, but that's the one that really gets me super excited, because now we run summits every month that we've been running for years at this point.
Yeah, sure. Mark, thank you so much for your time and insights. I think the value was incredible. I think you sparked some motivation and some great new ideas for entrepreneurs who's really looking for new ways to grow in these times. And for our audience, make sure to check out the Virtual Summits resources, which we'll put in the show notes. And I really want to encourage you, as always, to take action. Take those first steps towards your own virtual summit. Mark, thank you so much. See all of you next time. Cheers. If you want to ensure that you get free access to the entire series of content and interviews, plus more tips, tools, and tricks to grow your business, be sure to join our free Facebook group, Get More Customers. You will find a link in the description or show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like, love button, depending on which platform you use. This will really help us to get this message out to more entrepreneurs. We would also love to hear from you, so please engage with us and reply. What business are you in, or which speakers would you love to hear on the show? See you next time. Cheers.